Yo, what's up, everybody? It's your boy here, Logan Taylor with Y.B.Normal. This is the Class in Session podcast. I am
Yes, yes,
your host,
yes.
Logan Taylor. I have my amazing co-host, Mr. Dontay Hampton, and we have a special guest here with us today. We have Mr. Felix Beasley. All right, Felix Beasley, and this is the Class in Session podcast. Dontay?
Yeah, so Mr. Beasley is doing some great work in the Chattanooga community. He's a second. He actually had a career before this, and he was doing about 20 years working in the business sector and management. One of his gifts is connecting with the youth and seeing the good in all of people, including kids. Prior to teaching, he spent many years volunteering at various urban youth centers and throughout the community. He has an undergraduate degree in business management from UTC, as well as having a certificate in pastoral care for Tennessee Temple University. And he has a master's degree in curriculum and instruction for education from Tennessee Technology University. He's coming up on his 9th year as being an educator. And like I said, Mr. Beasley is doing great things. We actually met Mr. Beasley our very first time when we actually did our first very curriculum in Orchard Knob Elementary. And we had a lot of kids over there from various tiers as far as behavior issues. And Mr. Beasley was making great changes over there. So, Mr. Beasley, we're excited to have you on the show, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Beasley, how you doing, my guy?
Doing very well, very well. Glad it's getting a little bit of break for summer break. So I'm doing very well this evening. Thank you guys for having me on your podcast this afternoon.
Oh, thank you. We really appreciate it. So, just tell us a little bit about yourself. So I know Dontay read your bio. I heard that this is your 8th year. So, what
Ninth,
made
ninth year.
you? I'm sorry, your 9th year. Excuse me. What made you? What made you make a shift to want to get into education?
Well, the shift really was not something I planned exactly. It kind of just happened. As Dante mentioned, God gives everybody gifts, and we have to acknowledge whatever the gift is. I never was a person that was quote unquote crazy about kids or young people, but that was the gift God gave me. And somehow or another, I always ended up in some type of role as being like a mentor, a big brother, or something as life just kind of traveled. Teaching, I ended up teaching many years ago, they asked me to teach vacation Bible school out of the blue. 6 to 8 year olds. So I got my feet wet with some 6 to 8 year olds. They wore me out. They taught me good. Let's put it that way. But I enjoyed it. And then I went on to teach it for several years after that. So I was in the business sector. I was actually working in banking. And there's a program called Project Inspire, which offers people with undergraduate degrees, to opportunity to return to school and get a graduate degree in education. And you go through a residential program at the same time. And so I applied for it, and and it happened to be the person that was recruiting knew me and knew of me and knew of my involvement at various throughout the community and working with young people. And he quickly kind of called me, and we got the ball kind of rolling there. I did my residency at Dalewood, teaching 7th grade, and went through the program in a year to. It was very intense because I was teaching during the day and then doing schoolwork at night. But I went through the program and graduated with my degree with a master's degree in education. So I just kind of got into it, and it's been a wonderful journey. I'll say that sometimes you're living and you think you're doing what you want to do, but when you get aligned with what God wants you to do and when you align with His will, there are days I wake up and I say I need to get a job. And then I realize I have a job, but it's because I enjoy what I'm doing so much that it doesn't even feel like work. I enjoy every aspect and every part of teaching and being a classroom teacher. People ask me, do you want to be an administrator? I said, no, I want to be in the trenches with the young people and modeling behavior and modeling what it means to be a Black male educator before them.
I love that. I love that. A lot of people don't look at it from that lens, right? Like a lot of people look at it in the lens of, yes, I'm gonna be an educator, but now I want to be an administrator, right? Because some people don't like being in the trenches, as you say, and so I think that that's amazing. And I didn't even know about Project Inspire, and how you could do a residency, if you have an undergrad, and then be able to go to class and stuff. So that's amazing. So I commend you, and I tip my hat to you. And I always, always, always appreciate you for everything that you do, because like Dontay said, we first met you at Orchard Knob, so that's when you first heard about us, and that's when we first heard about you, and we built a relationship from there, and it's been amazing. And so I really, really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Beasley, what's a common myth, or should we say, a perception? No, we'll just say what's a common myth you would say about your field or being a teacher, just simply being an educator. What's something
I
that
think
everybody thinks, as far as a teacher, whether it is teachers have the easiest jobs, or teachers nowadays they say teachers are the new parents. What is a myth that everybody thinks that could be wrong or perceived wrong to the community, to the public?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think people think that teachers have like the easiest job in the world, and you'll have people say, I don't understand why teachers are always advocating for a higher pay or advocating for more. They don't work in the summertime. They get all these breaks, and it's just they work from the school is open 8 to 3. Excuse me. And so they think that that's the life of a teacher, but it really is a myth. And I think that for all of us who were once students, that's what we think. We went to school from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and that was like a school day. But for a teacher, our work starts before that, and our work extends far beyond that. And as a matter of fact, the more content areas you teach, the more work you have to do. And so, for example, if you're an elementary school teacher who's teaching social studies, science, math, writing, reading, um, you have to plan lessons for all of that. You have to prepare your lessons for all of that. And then you also have to be able to grade papers after that. So, I'd say the average teacher works a minimum of 50 hours per week, even though the state of Tennessee acknowledges us kind of as a state employee that's paid for 37.5 hours. The average teacher works at least 50 hours, even if you were teaching a high school and you were teaching Algebra 1 class and the Algebra 2 class, you have to do a lot of work in the background in order to teach. I don't know if people really know that when you're teaching, you have to start thinking like a student, and we figure out what error will the student make. What do we think the student's what's going to be a misconception? What is going to be something that they're going to do that's not correct, and how am I going to correct it, or how am I going to let them figure out how to correct it on their own? So it's a lot of planning that goes into teaching, and in each lesson, uh, each course that you're teaching, there's a lot of work on the back end that goes in. And typically in the school day, you don't have a lot of time between that 8 and 3. Particularly as elementary school teacher, you really don't have a lot of time to do any work there. Most of your work happens probably between 3 and 6 or 7 in the evening. And most teachers, of course, work on the weekends too. So we work a lot during the school year. And the only way it evens itself out is when we get is the breaks, is summer break, because it kind of balances back out a little bit where you get quote some time off, but it kind of takes away from all the extra work that you've done throughout the school year.
And speaking of hours, now this is just a little off topic a little bit. Now, do you think there's a setting to where things could maybe be like you do 4 hours here in a day, or is there a creative schedule you think for teachers, in order for them to be successful? I remember my little brother went to Hart Elementary, and they tried the year-round school. He didn't like it, but my mother liked it because they did basically quarterly almost. You would go for a quarter, you reset for 2 weeks, and you go for a quarter. And it was unique, different, because of course with change, everything takes time. They end up not finishing it. But do you think there is a set of hours for a teacher, or a setting to help them be just cause less burnout? since there's a lot of teachers that are actually getting out of the field?
Well, I've heard a lot of teachers make suggestions. I think that most people look at Finland. I think it's one of the school systems that has one of the greatest school systems in the world, and I think they go on a 4-day week, and they have 3-day, and they may go a little bit more of an extended school year. I don't know. I think that for a teacher, we have to learn to balance our time, to be organized, and to not wear yourself out. When I was a manager, one of the things I would always tell my team is you can only do what you can do. Once you've done what you can do, that's it. You can't keep pushing it and think you're going to squeeze and get more juice from the apple when the apple is dry. You have to give yourself time to rest, and really the effectiveness of your teaching is so directly related to your rest and how well you feel. So I don't know if there's a magic formula as much as there is um, a lot of really just a needing to find ways to include time for you and yourself. And then I say another thing. You talked about time. A lot of times in the summertime, we do what's called professional development.
Okay.
And so we go to different classes. I don't know if people know that or not, but we go to a lot of different classes in different curriculum areas in order to improve our teaching skills. And so I used to, I didn't this year, I haven't in the last couple of years, but I used to go spend my June as a month, and I might spend a couple of weeks doing some type of training in math and classes in math, and maybe 3 or 4 days in science. And then July was kind of the month I kind of took off to recuperate and rest.
Right.
We have to have that time to train too, and to
Yeah.
do professional development. Our licenses require we do a certain amount of professional development in order for us to renew them. So if you take away the summer, then that means you're going to be adding on hours during the day, and that I think is to me that's worse than having a summer break and the way it is now.
Okay. Okay. Get another Logan. Give him something, Logan.
Okay, cool. So let me ask you this, Mr. Beasley. You were talking about like your summer, how you the breaks make up for your school year. How do you avoid educator burnout?
Um, you know, you have to remember the reason that you teach. And I think that for this is just my personal opinion. I think that educators become burnt out because there's so much politics involved in teaching. And so there are all these parties that play, that have a say so and provide input. And really, a lot of times none of those people are ever in a classroom or really, know what you're doing. And I think some of it's the stress from dealing with knowing that there are outside people doing things and controlling. I, I think that when if you step back and go back to what you love, I love what I do, and so whatever decisions you make, I can't always control what decisions the state or the county or the district makes, but I can control my passion and my love for for the kids and for teaching. It's the same way as if they go and change or make a law and it changes or they change the roads. We may not like the way that the road has been changed, the redesign, but eventually, you look beyond that to get to your destination. And so I think that we just, as educators, have to be careful not to be caught up in all of the things that's going on around us, all of the evaluations. And we know it's a very extensive evaluation to be for teaching, all the observations, and all of that stuff that I think weighs heavy on teachers' shoulders because you're in there doing the best that you can do. Nobody really knows what all you may endure because no one's in there but you and your students. But then someone walks in and they see something or whatever, and they make a judgment of you based on a 10-minute observation. And I think that's what causes teachers to really become burned out because the people sometimes who are evaluating them don't really know that person's heart, nor do they know how that person's feeling that day. It's all about, oftentimes it's too much about numbers and trying to get this percentage of kids, whatever it is, and we just miss the whole point. And so I would just encourage teachers, and I would encourage people in life just in general, don't let yourself become distracted with the politics and rules and things that are going on around you. You do what you're supposed to do. And most of the time, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, then you're going to find peace and you're going to be okay
Absolutely.
because you can't control what other people are changing. You just do the best you can do and find peace with it. And then make sure you take time. Self-care is important. Take time to rest. You cannot take all your, my doctor was telling me his wife's a teacher. He said they went to the beach once and they saw a lady. She drug all these bags and books out there. And he looked over, he knew she was a teacher. She was grading papers at the beach. You have to be able to balance. Yeah. Well, I used to grade. Dontay, I used to grade them on. That was my Christmas Eve ritual. Christmas Eve, I would always spend time grading my papers because I always tried to have time the week after Christmas to have kind of free. So I always worked and
Gotcha.
graded and planned until.
Wow.
But you have to find a way to disconnect from the world of education and don't let it pull you in.
Absolutely. That's good.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
good. That's good. I haven't heard that one, Logan.
Wow. I ain't
That
heard
might be
that
the
one
best
either.
one. That's good
Yeah.
right there. I
Ms.
like
Beasley,
that.
that was powerful right there. So let me ask you this. What subject did you teach this past year?
The last 3 years, I've been teaching science, seventh grade science.
Okay. So let me ask you this. What strategies do you use that work in the classroom when it comes to science and dealing with your students? What strategies do you use that work in the classroom?
As far as like managing the students and so forth and
Correct.
making
As
sure the
far
lessons
as
being taught.
Yep, as far as the lesson being taught, as far as managing the students, because I do know that, especially like when you were at Orchard Knob, the students, you had students that were very, very, very rowdy, and you know, you dealt with them in a way that was just so nurturing and so caring and so loving that you could always get whatever it is that you need out of them. And so I know that you're teaching at the middle school level now. And so you're teaching science. And so what strategies do you use that are effective to help you manage the classroom or be able to teach the lesson in an effective way?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'll tell other teachers, sometimes, first of all, we have to remember kids are kids. I think of the Cheez-Its commercial when the cheese is not mature, and so he's laughing and giggling.
Yeah.
Kids are kids, and so as a teacher, there has to be a level of expectation to me for a child to not think a kid is going to act like an adult. And I tell my students at the beginning of the year, I don't expect perfect students. As a matter of fact, I expect students who are going to make bad choices. I expect students that are going to mess up. I expect students that are going to have good days and bad days. So it's okay to not be perfect because kids are not mature yet. They're um, and so when kids are behaving, you can't stress yourself out with it because sometimes kids are just being kids. They're just doing what kids do. But for me, classroom wise, the most important thing is to have a relationship with your students and to know your students. And when I say know students, a lot of time teachers will say, "Well, I know my students really well. I know that they live in this area or they have these many siblings." But when I say no, when I say I know my students, I know what my students need. I know exactly what each one of them need. I know how to motivate each one of them. I know how to correct. I mean, I know my students, and so they're. I won't say no two kids is the same, but we have to remember kids are individual, and so you can't treat. And I say that too sometimes. You can't treat all kids the same, and a lot of people get shocked. Oh yeah, you got to treat them as. You can be equitable and you can be fair, but you can't always treat all kids the same because all kids are different. You have to know what each kid needs. So some kids, that if you're out of line or getting out of line, maybe a raising of the voice might turn it around. Some kids, you raise your voice, it would mean nothing, you know. But one of the things I do with students, if they're not doing what I want them to do in classroom, I normally pull them out in the hallway and I'll and a lot of times I think their peers will think, oh, he's in trouble or she's in trouble, but I put them in the hallway and I'll tell them, I check in with them, hey, are you okay? And I'll say things like, I'm really disappointed that you know, that you weren't listening in class. And I really thought that me and you had a good relationship, and I thought you was on my team. What do I need to do to help you be on my team? How can we make it work? And typically little things like that are what changes a kid's perspective and perception of their teacher, because now all of a sudden we're working together. And so, and I never normally have to say, here's a consequence for it. But just the idea of wanting to be, on the teacher's team and being, you know, it, being being seen in a positive light is what changes the behavior. So, then the kid will go back. Most of the time they'll say, "Oh, I'll do better. I'll better." And when they go back in and they make improvements, I acknowledge that. Hey, oh man, I really do appreciate you. So you stepped up. I'm so proud of you, because a lot of kids just want positive attention and positive, um, hear positive things from adults. Kids always hear what they don't do right. So I make it very intentional to make sure I tell them what they do correct. I may not correct you just because you're misbehaving, and I probably won't correct you in front of everybody. You may act up, and I may not say much of anything to you until after the class and I talk to you or whatever it is. And but I, it just you just have to know your kids. You just really
Absolutely.
have to know you have to know your students. Some kids are really defensive. If I meet a kid and I know he's defensive already or she's already defensive, then I'm gonna compliment them. Oh, I like those shoes, man. I love them shoes you're wearing.
Yeah.
Or if they're wearing a hat and shouldn't have a hat on, I'll say, I love your hat, but you're really supposed to have it on in class. Can you take it off for me? Things like that. But connect with them and it'll turn their behavior around. It's really not that difficult, in my opinion. You just have to take time to know each one of your students, know what they need, and meet that need.
I love it. So building the relationship. So how you build the relationship is that you make an effort, right? You make an
Mhm.
effort to be equitable with each student that you have in your classroom, correct?
Correct.
And so being equitable, being respectful, and then knowing their needs. Let me ask you this. How do you know the need of which individual child need? Does it go by you asking them questions, or does it go by like, hey, I've experienced this before in the past with another scholar, so this is something similar? Like, how do you build off of that?
I observe the student typically. I do a I kind of do a temperature check of my classroom, and I also daily. So if my kids come in and they appear that their mood is off or something, then it's no point in me trying to teach you right now. Let me find out what I need to do to get your mood shifted back to ready to learn. But I observe the student. For example, and I'll just say there was a kid that he was a sixth grader when I met him, and I said he was doing something he wasn't supposed to do, and I corrected him, and he got a really, he kind of got an attitude and smarted back at me. And I said, maybe we need to call your parents. His response was, I don't care, call my parents if you want to. So I met him as a sixth grader. I knew that the next year I was going to have him for a whole 180 days. So during the summertime, it was my responsibility to strategize what was I going to do to help this kid and help this kid to be engaged in my class and to minimize behavior issues. So I already knew that he was easily defensive. That's what I picked up. If anybody said something to him, he became defensive, somewhat argumentative. And so I know that if I approach him in the classroom in any way that's kind of correcting a behavior without establishing some good relationship on the front end, this is what I'm going to get back from him. I'm going to get a bad attitude. I'm going to get, I don't care. Call my mom if you want to, or whatever it is. So when the school year started, he would do things, and and I wouldn't say a whole lot to him, but I would say, hey, I would compliment him all the time. I love those shoes you got on, and his immediate reaction was, oh, you jugging? I can jug too. I can jug too, and I would just kind of walk off. And so then the next day I was like, man, you rocking that tie or whatever it is, and oh, you jugging, you jugging. It was every time, and this went on for about a month. And so finally one day I pulled him to the side and I said, you I thought that me and you were gonna have a really good relationship. Seemed like every time I try to compliment you, you get upset with me. And his response was, "You did? You tried to compliment me?" I said, "Yeah." I said, I told you I like your shoes or whatever. He said, "Oh, I didn't realize that's what you were saying." His behavior changed. Never had a problem with him. Never had a behavior issue with him the rest of the school year. He just needed someone, and in him, I could tell what the issue was. He had been constantly told what he was doing wrong, and he rarely heard things he was doing right. So I had to know him well enough to know that I have to undo that behavior for him to be successful in my room. And so, like I said, I didn't have a problem with him the whole school year. And the other teachers say they did, but I never had a problem with him. He always did anything I asked him to do. He did his work. I would let him teach my class sometime. Just really never had an issue with him. But you have to kind of observe them, read kids' body language. Children's body language tells so much about them, and try to figure out, instead of trying to make them do what I want them to do, try to figure out what can I do to draw them into the classroom. What can I do to make them feel comfortable? What can I do to help them to get this weight off their shoulders, or this tension, or whatever it is? And so that's what I kind of do. And it takes time teaching a bit of time to get through all of them, but I kind of have like an invisible. I probably need to write down a checklist, but I kind of have an invisible checklist of who I know I've connected with or sit down and talk to. And that's the other thing about it is, sometimes just sitting down and having conversations with kids about just general stuff to get to kind of know them too. But if they have a behavior issue, make them smile. I had another kid, you all probably know him, but he would come in every day with a bad attitude, and it was because the parents argued on the way on the way to school, and things like that would happen. So I always knew when he come in, I would always say something to make him laugh. I would always do something, to make him smile, and to release that anger he had when he walked in the door of that school at 8 o'clock in the morning. Say something positive, make him laugh, make him smile, and get that off of his shoulders so that he could be ready to learn. But again, you have to step back and scan your classroom, look at them, look at their faces, look at their body language, and try to figure out, what's going on. And instead of jumping to conclusions, or instead of thinking that yelling at them or raising your voice or giving consequences is going to change it, you have to kind of figure out what is the problem, and then how am I, as the grown up in the room, what am I going to do um, to help this student to learn? And that's one of the joys I have in teaching that I enjoy the most, is trying to figure that kid out and trying to figure out how to turn that behavior around, and how to get them to engage in learning.
I love it. So making an effort,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
making an effort. I love that. I love how you take initiative in making an effort to learn that scholar, to how can I impact his life in a positive way, because like you said, the story you just told, the student, all he was told was everything that he done wrong. So when you complimented him, he combated that and thought of it as something negative automatically, because that's just what he's been conditioned to believe because of everything that he's heard. So I think that that's amazing. Like, just making sure that you put the effort when it comes to being a teacher and things of that nature. Dante, come on, man.
I think what I got from Mr. Beasley that I really like. So for everybody who's out there listening, that strategy of temperature check, I think that's very key in all schools, no matter your demographic, no matter what it is. I think that temperature check was major, and I think that's what's needed before anybody could teach anything, no matter what the subject is. I really like that. But speaking of that, Mr. Beasley, what you think about? Do you think there is a trigger, like in the sense of, can teachers have too much pride to where they trigger their kids to where they might not perform as well because of they're in their own way, pretty much. Like for me, I can remember a time where I was struggling in the English class, and Miss Veller, she was a principal now, but she was so hard, and so I felt like her pride wouldn't let me perform well in her class in English. I just felt like it wouldn't allow me to do what I need to do. And I made pretty good grades. I just felt she would do things to trigger me, and it would turn me out of wanting to not do English at all. Do you think that is that a problem in the classroom? Do you think that's something that happens every day, or can it be avoided?
I think that first, I do think it is an issue that's in the classroom. I think it's part of human nature for particularly us as adults and really even kids to be in control and wanting it to be done the way I want it to be done, and I'm not happy because you're not doing it my way, And so a lot of times, I think as teachers, we want the kid to do it a certain way or whatever. And you're right, we don't become adaptable to meet the needs of the students. And that has been something I've had to learn as well to do. And that is, to adapt, because each kid, like I said, every kid is different. And so for me to step into a classroom and assume that every kid is going to learn the same, respond the same, that's really not even logical to think that. This past year, I had what I consider one of my most difficult classes, but it was difficult not because they had behavior issues. They were difficult because they didn't have behavior issues. And the reason that they were difficult for me was it was me trying to find ways to connect with kids who already knew exactly how to behave in school and how, and so that was difficult, but I had to once again conform or being to become flexible to try to meet them where they were at. I like to think of myself as being somewhat comical. And so I would be in class and I'll say something that should be comical and should be funny, and they didn't laugh. So they didn't laugh at my jokes, And so it was like, how do you connect? How do you get them to relax a little bit in class?
Yeah.
But I think that as a teacher and as educators, that's kind of what we do sometimes. Sometimes we want it the way we want it to be, and we don't think of what do I need to do to adjust me to help all of them to engage in the classroom. I'm working, I think a lot of times teachers are working really hard to get the kids to see things their way, but instead of stepping back and trying to adjust to see things from the kids' perspective, um, a good thing to do a lot of times as a teacher is take a survey in your classroom and, ask questions and get feedback from students. And you're always surprised on the things they say, but they will give good feedback. But I agree with you, Dontay. And another thing I'll add to that is I think a lot of times teachers want the angels to teach. They want all of the wonderful and the kids that come in prepared every day, the kids that come in ready to learn every day. They want all the just sweet kind,
Uniform.
hmm But what I always say is that anybody can teach a kid that comes in already ready to learn and has a really strong background, already reading on grade level, has strong work ethic.
Right.
Anybody can teach them. They almost don't even need a teacher sometimes, but it takes a real teacher to get a kid who doesn't like science or doesn't like math or doesn't like English or whatever it is, and to find a way to get that kid to like it and maybe even love it, or to find himself or herself in that subject and what they can enjoy about it. And so it goes back to what we talked about before, shifting our focus from all of this other stuff and really shifting it to just the magic of teaching and being about the students. And when we become kind of about the student, then we adapt our behavior to connect with the student and to help the student to be successful. I tell students, you will be successful in this classroom. And the reason I can guarantee success is because I know that as a teacher, I'm going to make adjustments to make sure I meet my students where they're at, figure out why it is that you're not able to do whatever it is, and we're going to come up with a plan, and you're going to be successful in this classroom. I'm not going to leave you behind just because you're not doing it my way.
I love it.
Say that one more time for the people in the back, because I think they just
time.
missed what you just said. You said that you make what? What is it that you make, Mr. Beasley?
Oh, I remember what I said. Make adjustments.
Yes, sir.
That's
Make
what we hear.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Make
Making adjustments, being able to pivot, right? Like you said, this was your first year that you didn't have scholars that had behavior problems. And so you had to figure out, how can I adjust or how can I pivot to this, right? Because we know that, in some, urban schools, or some, non-urban schools, they have students that, hey, they have students that have behavior problems. And then some schools have students that don't have any behavior problems
Mhm.
and things of that nature. Um, but I think that that's important to be able to pivot, right? Because you experience something different that you've never experienced before. So just being able to pivot, like, I commend you for that, because that's amazing. I got a question, just to talking about pivot. We're pivoting real quick, so I have a question that I want to ask you real quick. Um, what is a piece of advice that you would give to somebody that's starting out, or that may be interested with wanting to be a teacher?
Um, well, I think a couple of key pieces of advice. One is, I kind of mentioned before, being organized. Have a excuse me, have a
Okay. Okay.
organizational system for yourself to make sure that you don't become overwhelmed. So organize your time, organize your room, make it friendly for yourself. Um, have a plan in place, because if you don't have a plan for the students, if I don't have a strat plan for how we're going to sharpen pencils or how we're going to pass out papers, you're going to end up with 25 different plans or 25 different ways of doing it. So I think if you're stepping into the classroom, you got to have kind of a plan and think ahead of everything you're going to do in the room, and have a strategy how you're going to line the kids up, how they're going to sit down, what they're going to do when they first come in the classroom. All of that you have to kind of be thinking on the forefront in order to minimize issues in the room, because they used to say idle hands is a devil's workshop. Well, that's true in the classroom too. Idle time is when mischief occurs, and idle time is when issues arise. So making sure that you're well planned. And then, like I said, the last thing that I would tell teachers: know your students, have a relationship with your students, get to know them, let them get to know you. It's not a and I know we're professionals, and a lot of times we don't want to be personal, and I'm not saying tell children all your business, but I'm saying
Absolutely.
it's okay for kids to know what your favorite candy is. It's okay for kids to know what you like to do in your pastime. But sometimes you have to step down and not make it where a kid sees you as this person that's way up here and I can't touch you. Kids have to feel like they can connect with their teacher and have a relationship with the teacher. A lot of teachers frown on lunch, eating with students, because we eat in the classroom. A lot of teachers frown on that. But when I taught elementary, it was always such a joy to eat with them, and I would plan my week that I would eat. On Tuesday, I would eat with this group, and on Wednesday, I'd eat with this group. I would spend at least a couple days. Some days I take them back to the classroom, and I take all the girls up there one day, and then I take all the boys up another day. But those were just those times that they're not. You getting to listen to them talk about whatever it is they enjoy, and you're getting to know them, and they're connecting with you, and you're not instructing them, you're not disciplining them. You're just the adult at the table, sitting there, listening to them, and that's what makes even now we have lunch in the classroom. I eat with them and listen to them, and we talk. I just say don't stand over my food. I want you close to my food, but we talk to each other. uh, get to know them. Um, get to know them. Go to their sporting events, but get to know them. But let them get to know you. That's key, because there was an educator on a TED Talk who said students don't learn from teachers they don't like, and I disagreed with her when I heard that, because I always thought, what does liking have to do with it? But I learned, she was a retired educator, but that's very true. Students struggle to learn from teachers they don't like, and students don't like teachers who they think don't like them. And I probably did say that again. Students don't like teachers who they think don't like them. So it's important that we, as the adult in the room, as the teacher, we make sure we make a special effort to make sure all of our kids know that we like them, we care about them, We don't have favorites, and that's why I said when I would eat lunch with them, I would eat lunch with this group one day and lunch with that group because I wasn't picking favorites of who I was eating with. You have to have that connection. And I think if you can get a good relationship on the bottom, the beginning of the year, then you're going to set yourself up for a really good a good school year with kids working hard for you and doing their best for you. And so that would be my advice to anyone who's entering the profession. And then lastly, don't lose your passion for teaching. Don't forget why you're there. We're there for the kids. We are there for the children. And don't let all that other stuff, don't let the other teachers who are complaining, don't let them you know, pull you off track, them and their complaining or whining. You remember what you're there for, because I'm telling you, it's no love like a student love to a teacher. And there's no love like a teacher's love to a student, but your students end up loving you. And it is awesome to watch them grow.
I love it. All right. So building relationships, being organized, building relationships, and what was the last thing did you say?
Planning ahead.
Having
Have
a
a plan.
plan. Having a
Planning
plan.
ahead too.
Planning ahead. Yep. Starting having a plan. So being organized, having a plan, and building relationships.
And don't
And when
forget,
it's
don't forget why you're there. You said don't forget your passion. It's all about the
your
kids.
passion. That's what it
Yep.
was. So building relationships, being organized, and not forgetting your passion. And those three things right there, for anybody that's interested in wanting to be an educator, Mr. Beasley just literally dropped some gems for you. So if you're interested in wanting to be an educator, you're interested to wanting to work in the education space, you need to make sure that you do those three things so that way you can add the most value to the scholars that you encounter. I love it. Dontay, go ahead, man. We got two more questions, Mr. Beasley, and then we'll get up out your hair, okay?
All right, Mr. Beasley. All right. Question for you right here. We ask everybody this question. You can answer this however you want to. Everybody gets this question, no matter who it is. Is there a number, if there was a number, that teachers could get paid, or is there a plan or structure or some kind of foundation you think that could be set in place to make educators feel their value to the fullest? Or should I say, do you think there's a number that could equal the same amount of value that you put in, the same amount of hours you put in every year as an educator? Is there a number?
I don't know if there's a magic number because everyone's different, but I will tell you that probably the greatest complaint from teachers is the lack of being appreciated verbally or expressively. So I think that I think that certainly, I think the pay is a reflection of the lack of appreciation. We value a doctor because a doctor has the skills in order to make your heart work right, or put your body back together. A surgeon does that, I guess. A doctor has the skills to prescribe medication to make you feel better. So we have a amount of money that doctors make because of that. But no one ever thinks about teachers have the capability to really change the trajectory of a student's life. Wow. Teachers have the ability to or foundational in all three of us and everyone that watches this podcast or watches anything. Teachers are at the foundation of that because they're the ones that sow those seeds. They're the ones that believe in the student. They're the ones that push students and encourage students and show not create the growth, but help students to grow and acknowledge the growth of the student. And so, but you rarely hear anyone say, you do hear people say it was my teacher that inspired me, but you rarely hear persons in the government or persons of levels of authority say things like, our teachers are doing an amazing job. Our teachers did a great job. Thank God for the teachers. Thank goodness for teachers. You don't hear those type of accolades with teachers. And when you add in the fact that the teacher's salary, the value that a teacher puts into a student is really should be equivalent to that of a doctor, or somewhere in that ballpark. And when you think of the salary doesn't even align with that, I think it just makes it where people see teachers in a negative light. There's a lack of value for the teacher. I mean, it just ends up being that way because there's no dollar amount, and it's the way it would be with anything else. A Mercedes Benz has a value amount because of the name brand and because of certain things that goes along with that, and so we value it and we say it's worth this amount of money because of certain attributes it has. But a teacher, for some reason, is never seen as being valuable in the community. So I don't know if there's a dollar amount. I think that if people really want to turn things around, I think that they will start first by just giving more accolades and acknowledging the work that teachers do, the hard work teachers do, and then that their parents would step back and realize that teachers have your kids for 7 hours a day. They are planting seeds in them. They're encouraging them. They're taking care of your baby. They're taking care of your child, and so there's a value associated with that, and we ought to respect the educator. And not only that, but educators have to be educated. So there should be a respect level that goes with education.
That's good. That's good. That's real good. Now I got a theory on this. So if this comes out one day, I done said this on many episodes. If this ever comes out, Mr. Beasley, you heard it here first.
Okay.
Because I'm big on essentials for people who, whether it be a nurse, a doctor, I'm big on essentials. I just feel like if there was a plan, everybody needs a house, everybody needs a car. So I feel like entry level for a teacher, there should be some kind of plan, and there should be some kind of median for a teacher to make, and there should be some kind of housing. If every teacher that came into the education field, no matter what you're teaching, had an actual house, it could be a 2-bedroom, whatever, an actual car, standard size, 4-door sedan or a truck. I think you should have an SUV, something in place right there. I think automatically you will get, the turnover will be less automatically. Like I said, this is my theory now. So if this comes up 5 years from now and the Department of Education say, hey, we're going to do this, you heard it here first. But
Dontay, if I can even respond to that, teachers are not even really compensated for all the things we do outside of the scope of our job. We're not even compensated. So, for example, particularly elementary school teachers are they are wanted to decorate your room.
right.
Well, who do you think pays for that? The
You
teacher pays
do.
for that out of their pocket. A lot of
Absolutely.
the supplies that are in that room, the teacher pays for that out of supply. And so in the regular world of working, when I worked in banking, I didn't have to supply things to the bank. The bank bought it and supplied it for me. But for teachers, mostly everything, a lot of stuff that you want. And so most teachers spend, at the beginning of the year, a couple of $100s or more. I mean, they do give you a little some money after the school year starts, but your room has to be decorated before the school year starts. So, all of that, if it's incentives for the kids, a lot of that even comes out of the pockets of the teacher. So we spend money in order to teach other people's kids. And I don't even know if people realize how much we invest financially into the lives of our kids.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So you feel that if teachers were affirmed better, then you feel like the teachers would do better or do more. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
Appreciation, pretty
Because
much.
because we're kind of like the children. When I say that students that are used to being told what they're doing wrong, typically teachers hear all the things we're not doing right. If a kid doesn't do well, we always get a lot of negative feedback. But I think if there was more, like you said, more affirmation and more encouragement and more positivity, and that is and to be honest with you, that is a basic business strategy. If you study companies that have great workplaces, Like I think Google has one. McKee Foods used to have be one of the top in the country, but it was the perks and the things they did for their employees that showed appreciation that made people want to work there, and they reduced retention significantly. I mean, reduced turnover, excuse me, significantly. But if a school district was ran like a business in that aspect, you would have less retention. I mean, less turnover. I keep saying less retention. You want retention, less turnover, but just incentivizing, and tell them thank you and all of that kind of stuff. If you look at some of the companies that have low turnover rates and you see the strategies they're using, our school systems could do the same thing.
I love it. I love it. So basically, the whole podcast is basically just making an effort, right? Just making an effort and putting an effort to show appreciation or to build that relationship or to, show kids, that they are equal or all scholars are equal and not treating, students, one or two students are not the same, treating them as an individual and just building that relationship and being organized and everything of that nature and having a passion for teaching and things of that nature. It all boils down to just making the effort. And I think that a lot of times educators that get burnt out or that have, these issues that with, quote unquote, they say bad kids and things of that nature, like you're not making the effort to build that relationship. And so my last question, Mr. Beasley, and I told you we had two more. This is the last one before we get out of your hair and get off of here. Um, where would you like to see education in the next 5 to 10 years? Now, wait, before you answer this, I want you to answer this from the lens of you being a teacher, because you already told us early on that you don't want to be an administrator, you know what I'm saying, and things of that nature. So I want you to answer this from the lens of a teacher. And I know that you worked at middle school and elementary. So where would you like to see education in the next 5 to 10 years?
I would like to see education become more equitable across school districts. A lot of the critiquing that even happens for a lot of the critiquing for teachers, and a lot of the critiquing that goes on to students and is passed to students, is really a result of lack of equity within our district and within the school system. And I would love to see educators. We don't have a plan. We don't have a plan on how to catch kids up. We don't have a plan on how to prevent. We say we have a plan to catch them up. We can put them in summer school and we have read 20 programs in the summertime, but we have to think in terms of being equitable and getting all our kids on the same playing field to begin with, in order for all of them to be successful. So I would love for education to move from being a kind of a competition. This school is better than that school, and every student deserves an opportunity to have a great education. Every student deserves an opportunity to have great teachers. It is the responsibility of those persons that are in charge to make sure that we are providing equitable access to all of our students. If we know that a lot of our kids are living in poverty or from lower income families, we know that they're coming into school not reading on reading level. We know when they came in as a kindergartner, they were struggling with alphabet and struggling with reading, versus that student that may come from more of a middle class or upper class family that already is reading, has a vocabulary of 4,000 plus words or what have you. If we know that, which we do know that, what are we going to do to fix it? What do we do? What do we do to fix it? Because if you're behind, you got to come up with a strategy to stop being behind. We cannot wait till our kids get in kindergarten to realize that they're behind in reading, and if they're behind in reading, then they're going to be behind in everything else. They're behind, and they don't have number sense at the kindergarten level. I would hope that our schools would eventually realize that we need to be in the preventative. Let's stop being reactive. Let's be proactive, and let's prevent this. Let's make sure that all of our students across the district have access to Head Start or pre-K or whatever you want to call it. But kids need to be in a learning environment as early as 3. If we had all of our kids regardless of zip code, if we had a educational system that had all of our kids, regardless of zip code, in an educational learning facility at age 3, and I'm not necessarily saying, some kids get a chance to, some parents put their kids in daycares to have that because they can afford it, but some parents can't afford that. So when I say making it equitable, I'm saying, what do we do to make sure that if I can't afford to spend this money on a daycare every month or every week, what do I do for these kids, to ensure that at 3 years old, they're in a learning facility, they're learning their alphabet, they're learning some sight words, they're learning their numbers, they're getting some number sense, so that when they get to kindergarten, they're all on the same playing field. And from that point, everybody will move up at almost an equal pace, or at least everybody's on the same playing field. And you never get a perfection of 100%, but what I'm saying is that right now, it seems like we want to change curriculums, we want to change this, we want to blame it on the teacher, we know where the problem really lies, and it's not. We want to blame it on the parent. It's not a parent issue. It doesn't make a difference who you want to blame. Fix the problem. Fix the problem. If the bucket has a hole in the bottom, it doesn't make any difference whether I blame Dontay for the hole in the bottom, or I blame Logan for the hole in the bottom, or I blame the people across the street for the hole in the bottom. The important thing is to fix the hole that's in the bucket. And so I would hope that our educational system at some point will say, hey, let's fix this hole in the bucket. Let's take some dollars and let's make sure that all of our urban youth have access to Head Start, have access to learning centers at 3 years old, so that when they come in, everybody kind of comes in on the same playing field. Because those kindergarten teachers and first, second grade teachers and third grade, they play catch up year after year after year after year, and they'll get critiqued and told how bad of a job they're doing because their child is not reading, their student is not reading, or the majority of their kids are not reading on grade level. Well, if you're playing catch up, you really worked hard to get them where you had them, but you're not being acknowledged for that. But instead, you're being criticized because you're not equivalent. Your student is not performing equivalent to that student who went to a private learning academy when they
Right.
were 3 and 4 years old. And
Mhm.
so that's what I would hope that our school district would, and at some point, would say, okay, let's just get all of our kids. Let's be the best district we can be. Let's get all of our kids on the same playing field. We know where the problem is at. Let's step in there. Let's make it happen. And let's make sure that we get early educational access for all of our children. And then we can catch up the ones that's behind, but see, it will prevent a problem from occurring in the future.
All right, I love it. 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 So, Mr. Beasley, again, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for coming onto our podcast. Thank you for rocking with us all these years. Anything that we can do to serve or help, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Again, guys, listen, I need you all to like and share and
Subscribe.
subscribe. I need you to do all of that. I need y'all to show love in the comments. I need you to do all of that. All right. So, again, this is the Class in Session podcast. I am your host, Logan Taylor, my amazing co host, Mr. Dontay Hampton, and our special guest, Mr. Felix Beasley. Again, thank you so much.
We really
And we'll
appreciate
see
it. Thank
you
you,
all.
Mr. Beasley.
And we'll see you all next time. All right.
And always, why be normal when you can be
When you can be
extraordinary?
extraordinary.